my midwife looked at me and she was like, I can take you to the hospital, but can I check you one more time?
Yeah.
She was like, you said last time that you weren't checked again. You wish you had been checked again. Like, I want to check you one more time. So I was like, fine. At that point, I was kind of touched out, but I was like, whatever. And so she goes to check and she doesn't even have to use her hands. She looks at me and goes, Chloe, I see a head.
Hi, I'm Kayla Heater, follower of Jesus, wife and mother of 5 children, Christian childbirth educator and doula, and your host of the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, where we share God-centered birth stories, evidence-based birth education, and our pursuit of surrendering our birth plans to God. Let's get started. Hey everyone, I hope you've had a wonderful week. I got to spend the weekend with my extended family, which was really fun. We all got together for my uncle's retirement party, and so I got to see cousins and aunts and uncles, and even my 95-year-old papa, which was so fun, and so special. So I hope you all have had a great week. My week got even greater because I got a new review this week, which is always so exciting for me. It's from Kathleen Joy 77, and she says, "Positive birth stories. I have been listening all along. This podcast and the boldness of the women who have shared their stories is such a blessing. It has encouraged me and helped me so much for my second birth. I wish I had heard some of the stories before my first birth. If you're looking for more positive, Christ-centered birth stories that will build your faith and calm your fears, look no further. Kayla is the best, and her birth education was also very helpful for me and my husband before my first birth." Oh, thank you so much, Kathleen. I am just honored every time somebody leaves a review. It's so special to my husband and I who work so hard on this podcast, but it also is the reason this podcast gets put in front of more women. So it's super easy. All you have to do is go into Apple Podcasts, scroll down, and click write a review. If you could do that, that would just make my week for sure. Also, we got a couple more entries for birth stories this week, which is so great and I'm so thankful for. We are still looking for more though. So if you or somebody that you know would be interested in sharing their birth story on this podcast, super simple. On every single episode, at the bottom of the episode, if you scroll down to the show notes, it just says interested in sharing your birth story, click here. And all you have to do is click there and fill out a form, and it will take you to a form that comes straight to me. And then I will get back in touch with you about scheduling a time to record. So if you could do that, that would be great. We are always looking for more birth stories for this Christian Birth Stories podcast. Okay, let's get into this week's episode. How much support you have or don't have matters greatly in your labor and birth and can affect pretty much everything. At the lack of support from her midwife and doula, she transferred to the hospital for her first planned home birth. Thankfully, God's grace met her there through a wonderful nurse who was able to help her through the rest of her labor. The next time around, Chloe prepared her team well. Not only did she have the constant support and encouragement from her husband, but from 4 other women who weren't just physically and emotionally holding her up, but spiritually as well. Chloe attributes the success of her second birth at home to her intercessors who never doubted her or God's plan for a second. Well, welcome to another episode of Surrendered Birth Stories. I am your host, Kayla Heater, and I have Chloe with me today. Chloe, take a minute, introduce yourself, tell us who you are, let us get to know you.
Yeah, so my name is Chloe Paul. I am a mom to 2 little girls who are 3 and 1. And my husband is a NICU or an SSEU nurse at the local hospital. And so a lot of my days are just taking care of the kids while he's doing his 12-hour shifts. And yeah, that's kind of my life right now is just toddlers and all the joy that that is.
I know the toddler life. It's not for the faint of heart. It's super, super cute, but also like, I was just thinking this in my head the other day. I'm like, I'm pretty sure the Lord added patience to the fruits of the Spirit for the season of toddlerhood, like raising toddlers.
Yes, I love it. I was a nanny before I became a mom. And so I've been with toddlers many years now.
They are a breed of their own. Whew. Okay, well, let's jump into your stories. So, take us back to your first pregnancy. What happened? What was it like finding out you were pregnant for the first time?
Yeah, so my husband and I actually had moved to Chicago. We were going to a Bible Institute there, and then COVID hit. And so we had been married for about a year at that time. We decided to move back home to Kansas. And once we were back home in Kansas, it was kind of like we've already kind of been married for 2 years. We're back with family. Like maybe we should start trying for a baby. And so I was only 20 at the time. And so that went way quicker than I thought it would. I had heard like all the stories of like the possibility that it takes a long time. So I was like, maybe it'll take a couple of years. But I was pregnant fairly quick, which was kind of a surprise to me. And so we were super excited. And I was thinking back, I'm not sure when I like entered the home birth world or like natural birth, whatever you want to call it. Like, I'm not sure when I entered that world. I know that I had a friend that tried for a home birth, but I remember thinking like kind of that she was crazy. Like I was like, okay, you're gonna have this home birth, and you're living room. Like, what are you doing? Like, and so I remember thinking she was crazy. So I'm not sure how that shifted between her having her daughter and then me getting pregnant. But so I had basically heard of one midwife, didn't really do as much research as I probably should have. And I went in and they were like, yeah, we have availability for you in that month. And so I was like, great. I literally didn't interview anybody else. So kind of went through that pregnancy, fairly easy pregnancy. And I really didn't know what to expect out of home birth. And I mean, I like watched some videos, but at the time I was kind of like a little bit of a lone wolf. My family thought I was insane. Um, they were like, just go to the hospital. What are you doing? And my husband was in school at the time, in nursing school, and I was nannying. So I was chasing around a 12-month-old. Um, and so, yeah, that was kind of my pregnancy with my oldest. So around 41 weeks, I remember going in to my midwife. And of course, everyone was texting me like, oh my gosh, go get induced. What is happening? You are way too pregnant. They were freaking out, all the fear mongering of like, the baby's going to die. And so I went to the midwife and I remember just like crying because I was like, I don't feel like I'm about to give birth. I don't feel like I'm in pain, which is good, but like I don't feel like I'm in pain. So I feel like nothing's gonna happen. And so she told me to go take some castor oil and get things going. And so I remember I like took shots of castor oil. This is not the midwife's brew, but at the time I just knew like I needed to drink castor oil. So I took like a shot of castor oil and then I used pineapple juice. And I still cannot drink pineapple juice to this day.
But not.
And so yeah, I drank the pineapple juice and castor oil. I went about my day. I remember as far as castor oil goes, I had a fairly good experience. I know that is not true for everyone. And so whenever people ask me about it, I'm like, I'm a good story, but talk to your doctor. But I drank it. And then after that, we went to dinner that night. I remember like, it moved things a little bit. And then I went to sleep that night. I was woken up in the middle of the night by contractions that were like, always hear stories of moms that talk about these like slow contractions that they're able to sleep through. No, like They were coming basically at 411 from the start. And if I laid down, it was the worst pain.
Yeah.
And so I remember standing on the fireplace, like that was the only position that I was somewhat comfortable in, and just like swaying and mooing a lot. I sounded like a horse and a cow at the same time the whole time. And so I had hired a doula with my first pregnancy. And that was another thing where I should have known more. I should have reached out to her more, but I just didn't really know. I was just like, I guess they said you need to be here. And so I didn't know her super well, but she showed up and was working me through contractions. And my contractions were just weird. Like I was having contractions that were 30 seconds apart and then 10 minutes apart and then 5 minutes. And it was just so unpredictable,
Yeah.
and kind of brutal. So at some point, we realized I've gone through all the night. It was the afternoon of the next day, and I was still just having these weird contractions. We tried getting me in the birth tub, and my contractions stopped for a bit while I was in there, which looking back, that was probably like I should have used that to sleep.
Yeah.
But I was just so determined. I was like, I want to get this baby out. And so by that evening, I had still been having these weird contractions. The doula had called the midwife and just been like, maybe you need to come and like just check her out, like see what's going on. So she shows up and I think she's there like maybe an hour or two. This is in the middle of the night at this point. And then she says, hey, I don't really think a lot's going on. I'm going to go put my kids on the bus. And at this point, I've been in labor like 30 hours.
Yeah. I was going to say it's been over 24 hours at this point.
Yeah. And so I like knew within me, it was like I was kind of like waiting for permission to be in labor because I was like, someone needs to be here. And I knew I was like, I feel like I'm really like far along. Like, I'm a first time mom. I have my husband here. I like don't know what I'm doing. So I kind of like freaked out and I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna go to the hospital then. Like, I've been in labor for so long. I'm in so much pain. You're gonna leave. Like,
Did she offer to check you? Did you get checked during that time?
so she had checked me whenever she first showed up, and I, at that point, was very dilated, but my daughter was still really far up, so she, like, was still reaching in pretty far,
Mm-hmm.
to try to find her, and so, yeah, my babies, and I learned this with the second, but they don't like to drop down to the last minute, and so I was super dilated. It was kinda COVID at the time, we were allowed 2 people, and so my doula went with me and my husband. We show up to the hospital, and I remember, like, her saying something to, like, "Well, you can go to the hospital, but you're gonna have to do, like, the consequences of, like, that decision too." And I was like, "Okay." Like, I don't know what to do. I'm a first-time mom. Like,
You just weren't feeling supported.
No. And so we show up to the hospital, and this is where I'm like, the Lord was so like over this whole situation because we show up and we have one nurse, but she's changing shifts. She's getting off her night shift, and we're getting a new nurse. And this nurse to this day is just a complete godsend. She had had 4 natural labors at the hospital. She is really about natural birth and patient advocacy, and she was just like an absolute angel sent to me in this situation. And so I kind of tell her what's been going on. And I remember her being like, hey, you don't need to get the epidural. You are so close. Like, I can just work you through this. And at that time, I think I had like told myself, I can't do this anymore. And I had just mentally just cut it off. And so I was like, no, I want the epidural. Like, I'm done. I'm so exhausted. I want a nap. And so she was like, okay, well, I can, get you a nap. But she's like, I think your position is wrong. Like, I think the baby's coming down wrong. And I think that's causing the way that your contractions are occurring and what's happening. And so I was like, okay. So this woman, I get the epidural. She this epidural, I could not feel, you could have cut off anything underneath my like rib cage and I would have not felt it.
So it was strong.
It was very strong. And she like takes that peanut ball and she is like lifting my whole pregnant body, 9 months, almost 10 months. She's lifting me and like positioning me differently for that. So that way Selah would move. And so she gets me in that position, has me take a nap. And then I just remember a couple hours later, she was like, "Hey, I think you're ready to push." And so I woke up, the doctor came in. She wasn't the like biggest on letting patients usually do a lot of stuff. Like my husband wanted to catch the baby and cut the cord. And so at first she was kind of like, I don't really know. My husband's also 6'7".
Oh,
And so
wow.
this OB was probably imagining like if this guy passes out, this is gonna be
This
horrible.
one's gonna be bad.
Yeah. And so, but he looked at her and was like,
I'm in
I'm
nursing school.
I'm in nursing school, yeah, like, and so she was like, "Okay, sounds good." So, I go to push, and my nurse at first was like, "Let's try it on her side." So I tried that for a little bit, and it's not like, nothing's really happening, and so the doctor was like, "Okay, I want you to move onto your back." And so, luckily, I had watched a lot of videos from, like, physical therapists, kind of, that had talked about if you are going to be on your back, like, the best position you could possibly be in, and they talked about, like, the tailbone and pelvis being like a jaw. So I was like, "Okay, if you're gonna put me on my back, I want a towel behind my back, and I want my knees together." And so I remember her, like, rolling her eyes and being like, "Whatever, lady," like, "Okay." So we do that, and my husband has to, like, hold one of my legs, and my nurse is holding another leg because, like I said, I could not feel a thing. So I start pushing, and within 5 minutes, my daughter's out. And the doctor was like, "Okay, maybe that like, maybe I'll use
Maybe
that."
knees together is a good position.
Yeah, she was like, "Maybe I'll use that again, that actually worked." And I was like, "Yeah." And so after that, I kinda just wanted to get out of the hospital, I remember. My nurse was working really hard to get me out of the hospital. She, like, told me, she's like, "Your baby is perfectly healthy. You are perfectly healthy. I'm gonna tell you right now, the doctor's gonna come in, and she's going to tell you that your blood pressure is high." She was like, "Your blood pressure is not high for having just given birth. You can go home." And so the doctor comes in. At this point, I'm a couple hours post delivering, and she like gives me the spiel about my blood pressure. And even with the coaching, I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll stay overnight. And so, because I was just like kind of in a vulnerable state.
Yeah.
And so I stay overnight. They don't even put me on any monitors or anything. So looking back, I'm like,
You were
okay,
actually fine. Yeah.
I was fine. If they were really concerned, they would have at least had me on, like, a blood pressure monitor, anything. Um, but, yeah, so I remember at first, like, thinking I was, like, breastfeeding to what I had heard. That's another thing that I wish I would have done a lot of research on. I kind of had the breastfeeding's natural, people did it for years, and that
It'll
whole
just naturally happen.
yeah. No, not at all. Um, my husband recently got his ties revised. So that just tells you,
Yeah.
how bad of ties my baby had. I got that epidural, I mean, probably when I was 9 centimeters dilated. So I also didn't realize that newborn babies don't necessarily just sleep for hours on end. Um, So she was, like, sleeping through the night the first night, and I didn't think, being a first-time mom, I was not thinking, "Oh my gosh, I should probably wake her up and try to nurse her." I was like, "Oh, she's sleeping, she's sleeping." So we get her home. I remember telling my husband, I was like, "I need you to move the home birth stuff out, like, I can't look at it. Like,
Mhm.
I need that to be gone." I start to try to nurse her, and every time I go to the boob, she's screaming, like, bloody murder screaming at me. And so I remember I went to my midwife, like, the 2-week appointment. I'm trying to nurse her. They're, like, pushing her head toward like, trying to get her to nurse, and she's screaming and throwing her head back, like, I was just in such an uncomfortable position. Um, and at the time, I, like, wish someone would have just looked at me and been like, "She just needs to eat, like, just give her some formula, like, it will be okay, get some donor milk, like, something." At the time, I was, like, so concerned about nipple confusion and definitely in a lot of, like, postpartum anxiety. And so I just remember sitting there and my midwife telling me that this baby wanted to nurse and that I was just doing it wrong.
The same midwife who said, I'm going to go put my kids on the bus.
So it was actually they were a midwife team. So the one at my birth was the one that told me she's gonna go put her kids on the bus. and she never even came to the hospital to check on me. And then the other one was the one that told me that my baby wanted a nurse and I was just doing it wrong. And I like at that moment, there was just something like that I feel like for that season was kind of like taken from me in motherhood of like I just felt like, okay, everybody else knows how to take care of my baby. Everyone else is a good mother. Everyone else can breastfeed. Like I feel like in those situations you never meet another mom that went through the same struggle that you did until you're through the season. And then you're like, "Oh, wow, this is actually way more, um, common than I would have thought." But at the
Yeah.
time, I was like, "I'm just not doing it right, and I
Mm.
don't know what to do." And so they gave me some numbers of lactation consultants in the area, and they basically said, like, "Don't go to the hospital, they're not gonna be of any help." And so I was like, "Okay." So I called all these lactation consultants, and of course, all of them were completely booked up, like, could not get me in. And I mean, at the time, my husband was already in school anyways, so we were not doing super great financially. And I just remember, like, with each lactation consultant that I called, just, like, crying more and more and just like trying to like muster up energy to not cry whenever I was calling them. Um, so basically, my mother in law came over and she was like, "This is ridiculous. You are not looking great. The baby's looking jaundice at this point. Like, I'm taking you to the hospital for the lactation consultant because something is better than nothing." So we went, and it was like looking back, pretty outdated information, but it was at least something like some sort of support. And so I ended up pumping with Selah, my oldest.
Like exclusively?
Hmm. And for a while, I tried like triple feeding. I remember just like sitting in a chair crying with her, just wanting her to nurse so bad. So that was a really rough time. And in that, like, I think I also just felt like the Lord was kind of far away. Like, I didn't really care much to, I don't know. I just was really depressed and anxiety ridden. But my daughter, once we got her on some bottles, got her Ties revised, she wasn't even drinking well from a bottle. When I did go and get her Ties revised, they told me they were some of the worst ties they've ever seen in an infant, that she had posterior tongue and then lip ties. And they told me that she was not even doing well with a bottle.
I'm surprised. Okay, well, based on what you told me about your midwives, maybe I'm not surprised, but I was like, I'm surprised your midwives didn't catch that and see that. I know with my home births, like that is something they evaluate that day, that night, like before they leave my home, they like
Mhm.
check their mouths for ties. And like technically they're not certified to diagnose it, but they know how to, and they would, recommend like going to the next specialist to get help. Man, I'm like, gosh, that just sucks. Like, I'm just like, your experience with your midwife bailing on you when it's like you could have had a midwife who could have said, like, you're doing so good. Like, you have come so far and you've got this. And like, let's just, take this nap on this side and let's do rest and let's change positions. And like, she could have like really gotten you through that instead of being like, you still got a while. I'm going to go. How long was it? Question. How long was it from when you like left, like when your midwife left you and you decided to go to the hospital until your baby was born?
So it ended up being from the morning until the afternoon, but that was with an epidural. So I can't help but think the epidural slowed down the process a little bit.
Yeah,
And
sometimes it slows it down. Sometimes it speeds it up. It just depends on the situation. But so like was it another like what, like 6 hours or something like that?
maybe if we
7?
added it, yeah, it's
Yeah.
4 to 6 hours probably.
Yeah. Man, which is not that long for a first time mom at a birth, you know what I mean? Like, it's not that much longer. Man, was your doula there the whole time at the hospital?
So she had never been in a hospital setting before. She was kind of a little bit hired by the midwife. And so she was helpful to the extent of like just being another person there. But she didn't really know a lot of how to support in the hospital at the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I said, I think my nurse was so on top of it and so knew what she was doing.
Your nurse kind of became your doula.
Yeah. Yeah, and even she actually with my next birth, she ended up knowing my new midwife, and I learned that after my birth, she ended up quitting the hospital, and
The
'cause
nurse did?
she felt like she couldn't advocate for her patients properly, and that really was getting at her, and so she is not in that world anymore, and we are literally begging her to become a doula that does because she's so good at position changing people.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a thing that we all talk about where we're like, we need to get Nurse Kelly to to become a doula. So we'll see if we can convince her. But yeah, the fact that I got her out of all
Out
the
of all the nurses.
is just such the hand of God. Like I
Yeah.
just knew the Lord was in that. Even though at the time I might have not seen that or recognized that that was rare.
Yeah.
Until I started talking to other people with their
Mhm.
stories.
What an experience,
Yeah,
man. Because I'm sure, like, of course, all of that plays into your postpartum. Now you've got postpartum hormones, you've got latching issues, you've got weight gain issues, you've got, I mean, just like the anxiety, the depression, like everything piling up and piling together. I'm sure I mean, that could do one of two things. It could push you so far away from the Lord, or in other circumstances, it could push you like really close to Him. But like in a season where you are feeling so, it sounds just like alone and unsupported and isolated and feeling like you're the only person this is happening to and it's your fault, like with all the things they were saying to you. Like, I'm just really sorry. I'm so sorry that you had to go through all of that.
yeah, I ended up going to therapy after that because that was a lot, and I probably need to talk to someone about it, and so
Yeah.
I think that's why now I can kinda tell the story without, like, getting
Crying.
but I do like, I wish that I could go back and, like, hug my younger self, so that's also why I was like, I feel like it's so important to share my story because there are so many people out there that go for a home birth and not everything works out. And I think you sometimes in this world you expect like an OB maybe to do something or the hospital system or you don't really expect it to come from a midwife. And
Yeah.
so that was really hard. It was also hard because to some people like they have a pretty good reputation. And so I felt like I couldn't talk about it either because I didn't want to like ruin their name because
Mhm.
and now, years later, I know more information. There's more that's come out, and I kind of know more what was going on in that office and in that world at the time. And I'm able to have more grace for the situation. But at the time, I was just kind of angry. I was like, I paid you all this money. And they had said stuff like that they wouldn't come until a mom was in so much pain that like she threw her phone against across the room. And they also like celebrated times when they didn't show up on time. When, like, a mom they were like, "It
Had
was
the
so."
baby before they got there.
Yeah, she already had the baby when I showed up, and at the time, I didn't, like, see that as a red flag, and now I'm like, "Okay, that's actually" like, I know that
Yeah.
happens sometimes, there's just quick labors, but that shouldn't be your, like, golden standard for a birth.
Yeah. I mean, that's like midwife means with women.
Mhm,
That's what it means. And it's like, that is what you were supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be with that woman who is laboring. And
mhm.
oh man. Okay. So what brought you I mean, I'm glad you went to therapy. I think that was a good and healthy choice for you. Like,
Yeah.
do you feel like that brought you out of it? Like, when did things turn around? When did things get better? And when, like, did you end up getting pregnant again?
Yeah, so my daughter, once I got through the whole situation and we got her some formula, I like was spending buku bucks to get it shipped from Europe. And once I did all of that, she was actually a really easy baby. I know like easy baby is kind of relative, but she was sleeping through the night really well. And my husband and I were like, we could totally do another, like one of these, you know? And so I ended up getting pregnant when she was 9 months old. Once again, planned. People thought we were a little crazy. I didn't realize how crazy we were probably for trying for 2 under 2. now I know, but it all worked out. And so I got pregnant again pretty quick, and I had met a friend, and she was just one of those people that like you just meet them and you're like, God put you in my life. Like I remember pretty much being like, we're gonna be friends. And she was like, who are you? Like and so eventually she came around. We invited her over for dinner, and she had done home births. And I was kind of like, okay, well, here's what happened. And I gave her the whole spiel, I was like, oh my gosh. And she like validated that for me and was like, yeah, that wasn't right. Like that was a hard experience. And so I was at the point where I was like, maybe I'll just go with an OB in the hospital this time. Maybe I just prefer the epidural. Like, maybe I'm just not that mom. Like, maybe everyone else is capable of being that mom and I am not. And so she was basically like, okay, well, you just reach out to this midwife that I know. She was like, this midwife has had all the breastfeeding issues that you have had. She actually had adopted a daughter and she had like induced herself to breastfeed. Super cool. She had done all that work, which is a big toll on your body. And then her daughter had tie issues. And so she told me, she was like, I was at the point of I can't ever look at a pump ever again. But she ended up doing it, and she ended up getting to breastfeed her daughter till she was 2. It was beautiful. And so my friend was like, can you call her and just talk to her and see how you feel? So I went into it like pretty defensively, like, okay, I've kind of like this area of my life has hurt me before, and I'm just gonna like basically tell you my labors are like 30 plus hours. I need all the support in the world. And if that's not what you want to do, then please don't take me as a client. And so I called her, and she was literally like, Chloe, I will sleep on your couch if you need me to. She was like, from the minute that you call me, I will be there. Whatever you need. And so I was like, okay, sounds good. Like I'll try this one more time. And at the time, my husband like kind of wanted me to try a home birth again. And I was kind of like, don't push it. Like, but I know now that that was him just wanting me to have like a redemptive experience, that he had a lot of faith in me that I did not have in myself. And so, yeah, I went through the whole pregnancy again. This time, my appointments were like an hour long. I was like best friends with my midwife. We were getting to the point where we weren't even talking about birth anymore, because at some point when your pregnancy is going well, it's just kind of like, okay, you're measuring great, your blood pressure's good. Well, what do you want to talk about?
That's what I love about midwifery care for home births is it's not just about, you and the baby's health. It's about your relationship. You're establishing a relationship with this person who you're trusting to like you're putting your care in for your birth and for your delivery. And that is such a special part of it. I'm assuming the fact that you said your appointments were an hour long this time meant that they were not an hour long with your first experience.
So they were scheduled as an hour long. And so it was definitely still longer than the experience I hear about from people in the hospital
The
setting.
5-minute OB appointments. Yeah.
Yeah. But it still just was not that like personal connection at all.
Yeah.
It was very like,
Clinical. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So we have a great relationship with our midwife. We've had a great pregnancy. Take us to the labor.
Yeah. So I had a friend that had just gotten her doula certification, and she was also a photographer. So she had asked if she could take photos of my birth, and she did not charge me for those. And so I had her, and she was a doula. And then I had my friend that had recommended the midwife to me. And she never got her doula certification, but she should have one. She is phenomenal. And then I had my midwife, her assistant, and my husband, who's a nurse, and the most supportive dad, husband. Everyone is always like, "You're an amazing dad." And so, which sometimes annoys him, but he really is. And so I got to 41 weeks again. and
It happens.
it does. And I just kind of have accepted that with this I'm actually pregnant again. Uh,
Congratulations.
yeah. So if I'm kind of breathing heavy, that's why. I'm 31 weeks. So
You're 31 weeks right now? Oh, girl, so you only have a couple months left. You're
yeah,
nearing the end.
I
I had
am.
no idea you were pregnant. Way to go.
Thanks. But yeah, so with this pregnancy now, I've been telling people I'm not due until a month past kind of when I'm due because I just
Wise.
mentally
Mhm.
tell myself any sooner because I just know I'm a slow cooker. I'm not uh
You're not a
I'm not a
microwave.
microwave. Nope, I'm not, which is fine. My babies all come out super healthy and at good weights. So I am very blessed by that. Yeah, so I was 41 weeks, and I always get a little worried whenever I get close to 42. I know that a lot of people still have super healthy pregnancies at 42, but it just kind of scares me a little bit. And so I got to 41 and told my midwife, I was like, do I take castor oil again? Do and she was like, well, let me just try a membrane sweep. She was like, that's another thing I can kind of do to induce you, and we'll see if that works first. And so I do the membrane sweep, and she's like having to reach my cervix, it stays like
Far back.
and so she was having to reach really far, and she was like, okay, I think I got it, but I left that appointment and I was like, something changed. I feel like I'm walking different. I definitely feel like that did something. And so I basically went home. My husband got home from work, and already I was like, someone come pick up my daughter. Like I think I'm gonna go into labor. So we try to go to bed, and I think it was around like 11, I'm woken up again with the same contractions that I had the first time. Just like from the get-go, I'm trying to lay down, it's not working, but this time I'm having back labor.
Mm.
So I was like, oh my goodness, this is very painful. But the bright side of that is I had done a lot of spinning babies to prep for this birth. And so I like knew what I was doing with spinning babies. My body just was naturally able to like go into those reps kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really have to think about it. And so every time I did that, especially the downward inversion, is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Especially that, it would like spin her right out of back labor for a little bit. And so in the middle of the night that night, I told my husband, I was like, I like stood up out of bed and I told him, I said, she is trying to break my water right now. Like it felt like she was punching her way out. And which is very much so my second born. Um, that is her personality to a T. And so he was like, okay. And I, started leaking water, and he called the midwife, and she's like, okay, check and see, do the test, make sure she didn't just pee herself.
Right.
Um, yeah. So, and I think at the time she kind of thought that I maybe just peed myself, honestly,
It
which
happens.
valid. It does happen, but he did it, and he was like, no, that's it turned up the right color. That is fluid. So yeah, my friend, her name is Kelsey. I am currently at her house recording this because she's watching my children. She's the one that recommended the midwife to me that should really be a doula. She comes over. She is 3 months postpartum with her kid. She comes over and pretty much acts as my doula. And so she is getting me, like, she's making me adrenal cocktails. She's taking me on walks, like having me do different movements, just really like trying to work through the labor with me, with my husband. And so I basically have the same exact labor that I had with my first. The contractions are weird. And I don't know if I remember to say this with my first, but when she came out, there was a spot on her head where we had seen she had just been a little bit off position
Wonky. Yeah.
and had been trying to go a little bit, and that was causing the problems. And so, yeah, she was over just helping me through the whole process, just praying over me. This time I had done like a little bit more like spiritual work of just praying to the Lord, talking to him about like, hey, Lord, like, where do you want to meet me in this labor? Like,
Yeah.
I remember I think like one of the hypnobirthing, and they talked about ask the Lord where mentally you want to meet when you're in labor. Work. And for me, that had been this really beautiful coastline in Rhode Island that I had visited the year before, that the Lord just, it had like a gorgeous garden. And the Lord just put that as my like kind of space that I would go to meet him in labor. And so I was able to process that a lot more. I had a few more pain management devices, I guess you could say. I really like the combs, the
Yeah.
like the combs.
Yeah.
Love that. Um, and so I once again went through a whole day. My contractions kind of slowed down in the middle of the day. My labors don't like sunlight. So we were like putting blankets over the windows, trying to make it feel dark in
To
the house.
try and confuse your body.
Yeah. Because we were like, don't slow down, like let's do this. And so yeah, I don't remember at what point my midwife called and she's just like, hey, I'm just gonna come over from this point on. Like, I'll bring a pillow and a blanket, you know. And so she showed up, and then soon after my birth photographer showed up. And so I have four women of the Lord there at my birth and my husband, and they are all just like praying for me. And it is so beautiful. The atmosphere of the home just totally changed. And so I reach a point though about the same time when I'm about 8 centimeters dilated where I was like, okay, I have been in labor for 30 some hours. I am exhausted.
Yeah.
I really don't think I can keep going. Like maybe I'm just like the doubt that I had from the first birth. I was like, maybe I am actually just supposed to be at the hospital. I'm just a mom that gets an epidural, like kind of just like calling that my identity. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but it wasn't in a positive way that I was
Yeah.
doing that to myself. And so I remember my midwife was like, okay, well, I have to like fill out some stuff. I have to make some calls, see who's, you know, at the hospital. Like, and I hadn't packed a bag because I feel like for whatever reason, whenever there's something mentally about it where I'm like,
Jinxing yourself.
yeah, if I have to transfer for an emergency, I can call my mom and she'll go pick up some clothes and stuff and it will all be okay. So I go to my bedroom and I start to pack my stuff. And I didn't know it, but like in the other room, all four of those ladies were circling together praying. And so I'm sitting there trying to, you know, find shirts and baby clothes and stuff. And my contractions start hitting me harder than before. And so I just like, they were very strong. And I come back out and they had heard me, you know, like moaning.
Mhm.
And my midwife looked at me and she was like, I can take you to the hospital, but can I check you one more time?
Yeah.
She was like, you said last time that you weren't checked again. You wish you had been checked again. Like, I want to check you one more time. So I was like, fine. At that point, I was kind of touched out, but I was like, whatever. If you have to, because, right. Oh, I forgot to mention that. The reason why I'd kind of gotten discouraged is she'd went to check me and she was like elbow deep trying to find the head. And so that's when I had given up. And so that had been an hour before that she was reaching so far that she was elbow deep in me trying to, you know, grab my cervix. And so she goes to check and she doesn't even have to use her hands. She looks at me and goes, Chloe, I see a head. And I was like, okay. And so I was like, okay, can I get the birth tub going? Like, and she's like, yes, you could do whatever you need to do. But she was like, if I take you to the hospital right now, I don't think you're gonna get there.
Like we're gonna have a baby in the car. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's like, you can technically do whatever you want, but and so I remember looking at her like straight in the eyes during one of the contractions after that. I mean, like, I can't do this. And she knew I was in transition. And she was like, yes, you can. Like, you have got this, you know? And so I was having one contraction where I was kind of hanging off my husband and I had to just drop to the ground. Like, everything in my body, I did not try to. I just did a like really deep squat. And I remember everyone like looking at each other, like waiting for a baby to come out, basically. And I think that's really when she switched positions from being posterior. So I had like one more contraction walking down the hallway. and I'm still having some like back labor. So I go to do spinning babies one more time, and I get to the forward inversion off the couch, and my husband is on a yoga ball, and he's holding up my upper half of my body. So whenever I come back up, and I sit there, and at this point, I'm like so in pain.
Like,
I
I
don't
can't
even,
imagine doing that position that far into labor. Like,
yeah, it like weirdly, it kind of actually helped relieve some pain. I don't, but yeah, I did it, and I came back up, and at this point, I'd like ripped off all my clothes.
mhm,
Because you just reach that point where you're just like, you don't even care anymore. You're like,
mhm,
everyone that is here now is going to have seen me
totally naked.
completely naked. Yeah. And I am in so much pain, I don't even care right now. So whatever. And I fully thought that they had like doggy pads down because my midwife knew I was about to push the baby out. And I fully thought that I was pooping. I thought that I was sitting there pooping on my couch. And but I was like, there's no way I'm going to the bathroom. Like, I am not getting up. And so I fully think I'm pooping. I'm sitting there like, this is so embarrassing. I am sitting here pooping on my couch until all of a sudden my midwife goes, there's the head. And I was like, wait, what? I'm pushing the baby out right now? And they're like, yep, there's the head. And she came out, her sack had, so she had broken the water, but the sack was still halfway on her. So she came out like kind of a halfway mermaid baby. Her face and stuff was covered. So that was really cool. And the birth photographer got pictures of that. So that was really cool to see. But my whole backside is towards the back of the couch. So my midwife really cannot get in to do anything, which looking back, I'm like, okay, I actually kind of liked that. Like, I didn't tear or anything. And I just kind of pushed her out. So, yeah, I pushed her out, and it was just a moment of just complete, I like, it had killed something that had tried to kill me in my first labor. I felt like, of like, I regained confidence in me as a mom. And I really felt like the Lord just had given me this situation. I don't know. So that way I could just have the experience that I had the second time, and also be able to like share the truth of support in labor and
Mhm.
how important that is. Because by the end of it, I was like, I don't think I could have done this if every person in the room was not there. They supported me so well, and like physically, yes, but it was spiritually. They were interceding for me at a time when I could not pray. Like, I was just kind of, I was experiencing back labor. And they really just interceded for me. And the Lord really just showed up in the situation. My baby was so healthy. It was just the most magical. I pushed her out at like 4:50. And so right after I pushed her out, I was next to a big window in my home, and the sun rose. And it was just literally that morning light like shining down on me with my new baby in my arms. Um and so it was the sweetest situation of my life. I am forever like addicted to home birth because I of all of the hormones that I got from that. And yeah, I remember my midwife came the second day, and she was like, "You are glowing. Like, you look so happy." And I was like, I'm doing so well. And it's not even that after that, like, my second daughter still had some ties. Luckily, this time I had called a lactation consultant the second that I was pregnant because I was so freaked out. But it's not like every circumstance was like redeemed in that moment, and that everything was perfect. And there was definitely still hard. And my second daughter, she did not sleep as well. She was arguably colicky at times. We had to take her to a chiropractor. Like, we had to do a lot, but it was just like the Lord had given me back something in motherhood in allowing me to have that experience. And so there was also something though that I found to be so profound after having done a natural labor. And it was that my whole life I have read scripture and been like, okay, Jesus had to die for us to have life. Like, you think about like sacrifice in the Bible, and they had to like sacrifice lambs, and that's kind of like my view on it. But after going through labor and going through transition and reaching the point where I was staring at my midwife saying like, I can't do this, and like kind of feeling like I was dying a little bit. And I always try to like specify birth doesn't feel like torture. It's not torture, but it's a strong feeling. I had so much more understanding of why Christ had to die for us to have life. Like it was right at the point where I felt like, okay, I actually can't do this. I'm actually going to die, that my baby was born. And it was just life and death came so close to each other. And that was like beyond beautiful to me. It just really helped me to see that the Lord was like not only understands that he's in that he's with me in labor, he's with me in all of it. And it also showed me there's so many verses in scripture that talk about birth and birth pains and that have such a like a deep understanding of that I feel like no like dude is ever going to understand, of when scripture's talking about labor, it really is speaking to us as moms and we're getting a different understanding than like my husband's getting
Right.
even having watched me go through it. And so that also like is something where I'm like, okay, the Lord has set up scripture in a way that when he inspired people to write those words, there's no way that these people that were writing these were the ones that had that deep like understanding of it.
Yeah.
Like it really is the Lord trying to like show us as women that he is with us and cares for us. Um and so cuz no man's going to talk about labor if he's trying to like the idea that like, Christianity was just a made up religion. Like no man is going to make up a religion and talk about birth when he's making it up.
Yeah.
So it was just that was so beautiful to me and like really changed my relationship with the Lord. I also feel like I think I've heard someone say this before, even on your podcast, but that it just, it also, I feel like the Lord taught me a lot about my second born and how even to parent her. Like she, like I said, she punched the water open, she's very strong willed, very feisty. But whenever I'm having moments where it's kind of hard with her, I'm like, okay, but God told me about this in my labor. Like I grabbed that kid out, like I knew she was going to be like this and it like prepared my heart for it and helps me to parent her better. So those were like really some of the major like theological takeaways from labor that I had. But the biggest one that I didn't even like fully wrap around until a couple months ago is just I think that as women, we have lost something in not supporting each other in this season. Because if you think back to like Bible times or even like more recent, before we had doctors and, all the things, it was kind of like, okay, she's giving birth down the road. Anybody that's given birth that knows what to do, like can come and gather. And so I was with a couple other moms and one of our friends was like over 40 weeks and just needed some prayer. And we went and prayed over her. And I've been in Bible studies my whole life. I went to theological school. Like I've been involved in that my whole life. And I have never been in a situation where I felt so connected to the people around me and connected to God as praying over another mom for her birth space, for the Lord to move in that area. Like we were just praying over her house, and that was the most connected I've ever felt to another mom. And I just really think that we have lost a sense of community in birth in the ways that we have changed it. And I find the community of just even women just so beautiful in that situation. That I had 4 other women sitting in my house praying for me while I was going through the hardest time in my labor is just like beyond beautiful. So yeah, that is really what I learned, and it has changed my view of birth. It's changed my view of community, and I'm just forever grateful for the Lord that even though my first birth was a hard situation, I don't think I would have learned any of these lessons as well if it had been an easy peasy beautiful thing. So
Wow.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I love your perspective on that. And you're so right. Like, and I can just see that transformation from your first experience to your second. It was almost like a complete 180 in terms of your support. I know you had the sweet, sweet nurse with your
Yeah.
first, but still just like having that team of people between your husband and midwife and friend and doula friend, photographer, like all the people to support you in that moment of when you think you can't do it. It's like that's when you need their support the most. Like that's not when you want someone to be like, peace out, good luck. Like, it's just I'm really happy for you. I'm really happy that you got to have that experience and even happier knowing that you're about to do it again.
Yeah.
That is so exciting. So
Yeah.
do you feel like you're doing anything at all this time to like prepare, for your third go round?
I think I have a lot more confidence in myself this time. And so I told my husband the other day, I said, I'm not going to tell myself this is going to be shorter, but I do think that I feel a little bit more like confident in that I can give birth and I don't need anyone's permission to do so. And so I wonder how that's going to change my birth mentally,
Yeah.
because birth is so mental. But also, I switched from like, okay, what are all the techniques? What are blah, 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 blah. It's become way more spiritual for me. It's a lot more prayer work. It's a lot more me with the Lord. I think I just, after all of that, realized I don't know. I grew up Baptist and birth was always a curse in the way that women talked about it
Mhm.
of like, birth is a curse, epidural is God's grace kind of idea.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, but if birth was a curse, even if we want to view it that way, that more pain and labor, right? What is the way out of that is like through worship. I really believe. I think that the Lord just changed it to where it's really just a moment of connection with Him. And if that we can dive into that, not that it's going to take away all the pain, which for some women it does, and great for them. I'm not convinced that it's going to completely take away all my pain, but I think it's just like going through that with the Lord and really being in that space. And I was even talking to my friend Kelsey about it, and she was talking about her labor with her last one. She just had a baby 5 months ago. Um, and she was talking to the Lord about like what other things she could be praying about during labor because she's like, I'm never so much in the spiritual world as I am whenever I'm in labor. And so I don't know, I'm almost looking forward to that time with the Lord
Yeah.
of just being in that space. And so I'm kind of preparing more in that way,
Yeah.
not looking up as many videos on positions and, I mean, those are all very, very helpful. But with my third, I'm like, okay, I have a pretty good grasp on a lot of these. I think I have a good team that will help me walk through those, but I need to be working on my spiritual and mental for this birth. So I'm really excited for this birth.
Well, I'm excited for you. That's great. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. You can reach me at Surrendered Birth Services on Instagram or email me at contact@surrenderedbirthservices.com. Be sure not to miss an episode by hitting the follow button. Also, we'd love for you to leave a written review of the show so that more people's births and lives can be changed by the love of Jesus and the empowerment of accurate birth education. If you really enjoyed this episode in particular, please take a screenshot of it and post it to your Instagram story, tagging Surrendered Birth Services. If you would like to be a guest on the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, please click the link in the episode show notes to fill out your interest form. Also, if you're interested in taking my childbirth classes, birth consultations, or having me as your birth doula, please click on the link in the show notes to take you to my website for online and in-person options. Just as a reminder, this show is not giving medical advice, so please continue to see your personal care provider as needs arise. We hope you have a great week, and remember, learn all that you can, make the best plans, and then leave it in God's hands. I can relate 100%. I am not the same person when I am 41 weeks pregnant that I am right now. And I do not make the same decisions.
Nope.
I'm like, I need my non-pregnant self to be able to tell my pregnant self that you will get through this. It's going to be okay. You don't have to induce yourself. Like, just wait on the Lord. It's like, I need, because I'm just not sober in that time. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not present with reality. I'm all caught up in my hormones and yeah.